Hello, friends and listeners. We are proud to present today's guest, Miss Carol Fletcher. I'm personally a huge fan of Miss Fletcher. She is an experienced board member with a demonstrated history in STEM education, research, and policy advocacy. Skilled in STEM, educational technology, instructional design, and team building. Strong business development professional with a PhD focused on science education from the University of Texas at Austin. She currently directs Expanding Pathways in Computing EPIC, a research and service unit of TACC launched in 2019 that focuses on broadening participation in K-20 computing pathways. Carol is the former deputy director of the STEM Center in UT Austin's College of Education and has 30 years of experience in STEM education, professional development, research, and policy. Miss Fletcher, welcome. We are so excited to have you on our show. Let's talk computer science.
Thanks for having me.
So, Miss Fletcher, I am a huge fan of you. I've been hearing about you and reading about you since 2016, and I'm so honored to talk to you today. And I have one question before going into the questions that are here. How do you feel like the impact you have done for so many students, so many lives, so many underprivileged kids, and so many girls, and you are such an amazing role model for girls?
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I'll start with saying it's not just me. While I lead We Teach CS, I have an amazing team that works with me, and there's no way I could do it without them. And they make me look very good. But we're very proud of the work that we've done. You know, when we first started, as you said in your introduction, I've been doing really math and science teacher professional development for about 20 years at UT Austin before ever moving into computer science teacher professional development. And my kids were going into high school and I wanted them to take computer science. And we only had one course called APCSA at our high school. And neither one of my kids had an interest in majoring in it, but I felt like to be a well-rounded person, they needed computer science. APCSA is probably not the best course to have just your one-off course. So I started looking around at other schools in our area because I was a school board member also, and you always compare yourself to other schools when you're a school board member. And I found out we were actually doing better than most because at least we had computer science. And the majority of schools in Central Texas and the state of Texas didn't have a single computer science class, which I thought was amazing. And so I asked the area leadership, superintendents and others, you know, how come you're not teaching computer science? And they always kept back saying, we don't have teachers. And so I asked two questions. Who's training new computer science teachers and who's working to build the skills of existing teachers? And I found out the answers were no one and nobody. And that's when I said, well, we could take this big program we have for math and science teachers and basically just grow a new version of it for computer science teachers. And that's what we did when we developed We Teach CS. And then immediately we realized that we needed to put our professional development online because unlike math and science teachers, which there's a lot of those in every single school district, even a smaller district, computer science teachers are so spread out across district. I mean, you could have one teacher and you could go for 200 miles without running into another computer science teacher in West Texas. And so we knew immediately we would need to put things online. I had never taken an online course. I'd never created an online course. I also didn't know how to code or anything like that until I started doing this work myself. But I learned those things and hired really good people to help us. And so as a result, we have really been able to scale the work that we've done, and we've been able to get support from places like National Science Foundation and Texas Education Agency and Google and Microsoft and AT&T and Siegel Family Endowment and all others to try and make these resources available to teachers. And we offer a $1,000 stipend to any teacher that puts the work in to get certified from the state of Texas. So it's not really enough to do more than say thank you, but it's more than most teachers get to add new skills. So proud to say we've helped over 540 teachers since we launched that effort in September of 2018 to gain a certification in high school computer science in the state of Texas alone, which is more than every pre-service university-based program in the country combined.
Wow. So since September 2018 started this program, and how many teachers?
I'm sorry, September 2015. Since September 2015, we've helped over 540 Texas teachers get certified in computer science. And then we have partnerships now. We were so successful in Texas that we had people from places like Wisconsin and Georgia and other states, Maryland, Virginia, Ohio, Arkansas, taking our online course that helps give teachers the content knowledge they need to get certified, that we created a second version for teachers outside of the state of Texas. It's called Foundations of Computer Science for Teachers Praxis Prep. And it covers all the content on the Praxis. So we now have hundreds of teachers from around the country that are also getting certified after going through our professional development in their own states.
So can you talk to me a little bit about how to become CS teacher? What are the different paths for someone to become a CS teacher in the state of Texas and in general US? How many ways in Texas and how many other ways? Maybe, I don't know.
That's interesting. We actually just presented a poster session, a research poster about did a research project where we looked at all 50 states to find out what are their pathways. And it is incredibly complicated. There's kind of three ways of people coming to CS certification. There is what we would call an initial certification, which is like an undergrad is enrolled in a teacher certification through a pre-service program and goes through what any traditional certification would be. They major in something like math or computer science, and then they also exit with some kind of teacher certification by taking this coursework, then passing an exam. Then there is what we call an add-on certification. And in the state of Texas, that add-on certification applies to not only computer science, it's really any subject. And if you are an already certified teacher in any other subject in the state of Texas, to add an additional certification, because you've already demonstrated you know how to teach because you've passed the initial certification and been trained initially, to add an additional subject area, you just have to pass the Texas exam, which is an acronym for our state certification test, in that particular subject area. And so it keeps the bar low from there's not a lot of seat time requirements. You just have to demonstrate you know computer science. It's a hard test, but it is a way for teachers who are already certified in some other subject who have committed to being a teacher to add this additional certification so that they can teach high school computer science as well. And then in some states, there's also what we call an authorization, which is essentially a state may say, well, we don't have a certification exam or you don't have to pass an exam, but if you're already math certified, we're authorizing you to teach computer science. So that's nice because it opens the window for more teachers to teach, but there's really no quality control because there's no verification that person actually knows anything about computer science because they've not demonstrated their competency. So in Texas, to get certified, you have to, through our program, you have to already hold some others. It can be in preschool. It doesn't matter, pre-K. It doesn't matter what the certification is. You hold a valid Texas certification. Then you can, our online course, Foundations of Computer Science for Teachers, is a 40-hour asynchronous online course that covers all of the competencies measured on the certification exam. We also have 700 practice questions for teachers. We have 6 quizzes and 100 questions simulated final, exam that kind of looks like the Texas exam. And we have like 200 videos to teach the content. And that's all self-paced. Teachers can go through at their own pace. So if they know a bunch of stuff and they just need to, get better at data structures, they can just do that part, or they can go through the whole thing. And our research shows that even teachers who get 100 on our pretest, the more that they engage with our course, meaning the more practice questions and modules they finish, the higher the likelihood that they will pass the certification exam. And then if you do all of that, we'll give you $1,000 to get certified. Now, you don't even have to take our professional development. If you just go and add the certification, we'll give you $1,000 to get certified if you're in the state of Texas. But our research shows that you will be much more likely to be successful if you go through our PD. Then we also have something we call We Teach CS Cert Prep, which is kind of the more synchronous version and condensed of the online course. We recommend people take that after the online course, because then we can focus really just on the areas that you need the most help with. And that's like a 3-day, now it's all virtual, but it's essentially a 3-day professional development. And then we also have courses that are not about things that are measured on the exam, like we have a course around equity and inclusion called Strategies for Effective and Inclusive Computer Science Teaching. We have courses that'll teach you Java. We have courses for advanced Java we call We Teach Java and We Teach Java Espresso. We have courses for brand new people called Introduction to Programming that starts with block-based programming and will get you to text-based in Python. So we have kind of run the gamut where you can kind of insert yourself depending on what your background.
So for Texas, if they're already a certified teacher, they need to take the exam for CS certification and they can become the teacher. That's and right. You guys, if someone decides to take that, you guys give $1,000 scholarship.
Right. They have to kind of apply on our website and prove that they're already certified, but that's really the only thing they have to do is apply and then demonstrate that they passed the test.
Apply on the
weteachcs.org website.
On the weteachcs.website.
Yeah.
And if they need help getting trained, like you provide 2 options. One is completely asynchronous 40-hour training, which has 200 videos, 700 practice tests, and 6 quizzes that simulate. Mm-hmm. And after that, if they want additional PD, you also have an in-person, now it's virtual, but normally it's an in-person 3-day PD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So wow. So no wonder you guys have produced 540 CS teachers in Texas. So is it the same certificate? And you have mentioned some teachers just have authorization. They would get any teacher to teach computer science. But many other states like Wisconsin, they do have Wisconsin, Virginia, Maryland, they do have the practice CS test. Is it same as what you have, or is it different?
So those 2 tests, the Texas and the Praxis, used to be essentially exactly the same test a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And then they updated the Texas exam and then they updated the Praxis. So they diverged by about 30%. So what we did was we created a new version of our Foundations of Computer Science for Teachers course. That the one that's for Texas is called Foundations of CS for Teachers Texas Prep. And the one for everybody else is called Foundations of CS for Teachers Praxis Prep. And so if you're in Wisconsin, you would take the Foundations of CS for Teachers Praxis Prep because it's 100% aligned to all of the competencies on the Praxis test. So for the people, we have a lot of partnerships with states all over the country, and those individuals take the Praxis version of the test. Of the course, because they're going to take the Praxis test. And then we also have a partnership with CSTA, the Computer Science Teachers Association. So if there is an individual teacher, just a one-off individual teacher who wants to do this and they're not part of some bigger grant in their state, I recommend signing up for our course by going through CSTA, because you get it for half price if you're a CSTA member. You pay full price if you come straight to us. So normally the course would cost $600 to take that 40-hour course. If you take it through CSTA, it's $299. And so that's a better route. If you're an individual teacher paying for it yourself, you should definitely become a CSTA Plus member. That costs you $50. And then you get this huge discount for our class, plus a bunch of discounts and a bunch of other benefits for being in CSTA also.
Okay. And what is the PD, in-person PD, that costs?
I think that is probably $600 also. I can tell you right now real quickly. Typically we're about $200 a day, but it may be different because it's usual. Yes, that's $600. The other benefit of those courses is even after you finish the course and get your CPE credits from UT Austin, you still have access to all of those instructional materials in perpetuity. So now you're going to go teach computer science. All of those videos that you use to learn CS yourself, you can use in your classroom to teach it. So that's still freely available to you even once you finish the class. And then you also get access to monthly seminars or webinars that are synchronous from our We Teach CS instructors like John Owen, who's kind of the star of our Cert Prep course. So once you're signed up for that foundations course, that $600 foundations course, you get perpetual benefits from being kind of signed up for that course even after you finish the course.
Awesome. So just to recap what I understood, like in the entire US, there are 3 ways for someone to become a CS teacher. So first, they need to be a certified teacher to teach.
That's one of the options. That's not an option in all states. In some states, you can be a certified teacher and then add on a
CS teacher certification
or authorization
or praxis test.
Yeah.
That's one option. Other options are probably even more complicated, right?
Right. The pre-service version, and that is few and far between. There are very few places that are offering pre-service pathways. But it's very different no matter what state you're in. In some states, you have a professional development option. So in some states, you have to go through a certain series of PD and you can be authorized. In some states, you have to go through PD and pass a test, and you can be authorized. In some states, you can just pass a test and be authorized. So it's different in every single state, and it's constantly changing because so many states are adding these new opportunities. I believe in Wisconsin, all you have to do is pass the praxis test.
Right. Yep. So can the teachers move across states?
So that, once again, that's really dependent on the state. In some states, particularly I think in the Northeast, there's a lot of mobility in the certification, and others, like if you're moved to Texas, I don't know exactly how I don't know if you have to take a certification exam or if it actually transfers over. I don't actually know that. Texas is so big, it's hard to say what that rule is. I'm sure that there is some pathway that's a little easier in our state. I don't think they all have to take a test, but I can't swear to that.
So that's really good information on how to become CS teachers, especially because there's so much demand on computer science teachers. I hope some of the teachers decide to take this route and become CS teachers. And also there's so much opportunity to impact the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's really, I think, one of the big reasons teachers are doing this. We actually did some research on, well, what motivated you to become a CS teacher? And we're finding, probably the number one is it's something that they found interesting. Here was an opportunity to learn more about it, particularly if it was grant funded. And so they weren't shelling out their own money. It was a way to kind of grow professionally themselves and personally. But then the second biggest motivation was, nobody else is doing it. I've got to do it because no one else is doing it at my school. Somebody's got to bring this to kids.
Right, like you did, right? Like you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now switching gears a little bit, can you please talk to us about the different trends in K-12 CS education? Are there any major changes?
So we are seeing a lot more states. Every year, a few more states are increasing the kind of, requiring schools to offer a computer science course. Or now there's actually a handful of states that are requiring computer science as a graduation requirement. Then I would say the other big trend we're seeing is a lot more states adopting actual standards for computer science courses, which has been one of the challenges that we faced in trying to measure, are we getting more diverse students into computer science and helping to be successful, has been a lack of consensus on how do we define a computer science class at a state level. Because if you don't have standards, one school might call keyboarding computer science and the other school is very different. And typically that's along a continuum of wealth. Wealthy schools have computer science and poorer schools have,
PowerPoint.
Office and Google applications and keyboarding. And there's nothing wrong with learning those things. I learned all of those things, but those aren't computer science. And so with standards, the important equity component of standards is that when you have standards, now you have an agreed upon definition of what it means to offer a computer science course and what it doesn't mean. And so we're seeing more states, with the leadership of CSTA and others to develop the K-12 framework, more states developing those standards so that we can have a common conversation about what that means. And then we can focus on, okay, now who's taking those classes and how do we diversify the kind of kids that are actually taking those classes. I'd say the other trend that we're seeing is a greater interest in integrating computational thinking at the elementary level as the strategy, and not making it just about some special robotics club that's happening with a small number of privileged kids. And so we're really happy to see that trend. It's a lot harder to measure at the elementary level. And it's harder to measure integration than it is to measure, things like X kids enrolled in X course. But we know that that's what needs to happen. We've got to, particularly with young girls, we know we have to expose them earlier so that they can develop an identity in STEM and computer science before they move on to middle and high school. I used to be a middle school teacher, and I actually ended up loving teaching sixth grade the most, because when you teach sixth grade, it's the first year that kids are kind of in this middle school environment where they're changing classes. But they start the year off as children and they go home for Christmas break and they come back and they're teenagers. But if you really kind of structure your class right, you've kind of got them. They're so malleable about their identity. That's when they start developing, particularly young girls, this identity of, am I going to let people know I'm good at math and science and technology, or am I going to try to hide that? And so I loved teaching at that grade level because that was a big focus of mine, was helping young girls to develop this identity and confidence about, being good at math and science and not being afraid or thinking it wasn't a girly thing to do. So.
Yep, I totally agree. Yep. So what do you think are the kind of resources out there to teach CS for K-12 schools right now?
So, we have the AP Computer Science Principles course that was launched a few years ago. That's been remarkably successful at helping to increase both the overall number of students taking high school computer science, as well as the kinds of students, the diversity of students. And there's a lot of free curriculum for APCS principals. It's not something, if you're a school district, you don't need to be paying for curriculum there. So that's great. Code.org also has a lot of free curriculum. You pay for the professional development, but the curriculum is freely available. So that's really nice because that helps with the long-term costs, and it's all online and available. We partner with Boot Up PD to do integrated computational thinking at elementary schools. And they have a great model which really coaches teachers, and we will go into a school, work with an entire kind of grade level or school to help build their capacity, coach and mentor them, even co-teach with them the first couple of classes so that they feel more comfortable. So I think that's a really good model for doing the work. And then from a technology perspective, we are a big proponent of both Texas Instruments and microbits. Texas Instruments because it's a great way for schools and teachers and students who are already familiar with using those TI handhelds for math and science classes. They now have Python integrated in there. And so it's a way to baby step into some coding with technology that they're already familiar with. We actually offer a workshop called CS Jumpstart that kind of integrates learning block-based coding, Python, and using the TI handhelds and robotics. And then the microbit is just a really inexpensive resource, about $15 to $20 a microbit, like a microprocessor that has a lot of functionality and is a great tool all the way from really early elementary through high school. And so it's inexpensive and really scalable, low floor, high ceiling type of tool. I don't think you can buy them now because of the shortage of semiconductors in the United States right now. But that's one thing that we recommend to school districts is considering investing in. It's very flexible.
So can you talk about what are the ideal solutions for resources that are needed to help improve and increase CS education?
So I think, first of all, people need to take a strategic look at this and look at it from a K-12 perspective. One of the projects we work on is working with vertical feeder patterns of schools, an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school, and the administrators and teachers in those schools to understand how are we building that kind of capacity all the way from elementary through to high school. I think from a long-term strategy perspective, that's what's going to be necessary, particularly if you want to diversify the student population that ends up in your high school CS courses. You just have to do that early, or you're just constantly rolling a rock uphill in high school if you aren't starting early. So that, from a strategy, that perspective. Another strategy for really an inclusive approach is you have to, at high school in particular, we have to engage the counselors. The counselors are the gatekeepers to coursework. And it saddens me how many people I've heard from that have said, yeah, I wanted to do, particularly women and people of color, such and such in high school, and my counselor discouraged me from taking that class. And so we have to engage counselors. And one of the other projects I work with, that's part of what we've done, is help our teachers understand the goal of that project. It's called Awesome in CS, Accelerating Women's Success and Mastery. And their goal is to build capacity for more girls to be successful in middle and high school CS. So they've gone to their counselors and talked to them about, it's not just for kids who say, they're great at math. It's not just for kids who say they're interested in technology. Don't dissuade, the young women. we focus our coursework on really kind of meaningful, engaging problems as the center point, not the technology as the center point. The technology is the tool for solving an interesting, meaningful challenge for students in the class. It's not about learning the technology for technology's sake. It's about using the technology for the sake of tackling this other meaningful kind of social issue. So, if you're worried about, Austin gentrification is a huge deal in Austin. So looking at data and data science to look at the patterns of gentrification and its impact. Police interactions with their communities and using data science to do that type of analysis. That's something that really is motivating for kids. Looking at how can we use computing to address issues of healthcare and biological sciences like COVID-19 and disabilities. We have teachers that are 3D printing prosthetic limbs for young children in their computer science classes. So, those kinds of things that aren't about getting in there because you like the technology, but you helping them use technology. And then lastly, I would say we have got to stop using math as a gatekeeper to computer science and start using computer science as an on-ramp to success in math. And bootstrap algebra is a great example of that, and bootstrap data science. But that's a big thing that we promote, particularly with counselors and teachers, is stop assuming that if they have these math skills, then they can be allowed to take computer science, and think of how you can use computer science and the way that it can engage kids to help them build their self-efficacy and see themselves as being a person that can be good at math as well. And I think flipping that paradigm would help in a lot of ways. And we all know schools and administrators and teachers are held accountable for math scores. And so using computer science, which kids all want to do, as your context or vehicle for success in math could be a very productive way to leverage computer science and not just see it as some add-on that's for some special privileged group of kids.
Yep, totally agree. That's golden, what you have said. Yeah, mm-hmm. Math shouldn't stop anyone taking from computer science.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt you need to have math skills, but use computer science to build the math skills. Don't mm-hmm. use math skills as the barrier to getting to do the fun stuff in computer science.
So based on everything you have said, I have one more question. You made me think about this. So computer science is foundational to so many fields of study and many industries, but the participation and representation is far from even. So, and if we talk about specifically Title I schools, when the focus is testing, how can we get to computer science? Like, it's almost like we have to test students on computer science.
Yeah.
Like it's because these kids, even if they decide to become a car mechanic, NFL player, or computer science software engineer, regardless of what career they're going to choose, they have to have technology background.
That's right. Yep.
So yeah,
I don't think adding a test is actually going to help. Although it seems like, yeah, you're right. There's no doubt we respond to the accountability levers that are in public education are about testing. But I think the general consensus is not yet that would actually help to accomplish what we want to accomplish. But I do also think that if we take that approach, that in my opinion, most of the reason kids struggle in school is not about intellectual ability, it's about engagement. and
Yep.
self-efficacy. You know, if they had negative experiences when they were younger in math, etc., then they automatically turn that off and say, I can't do that. I'm not a math person. Most people you would never publicly admit, I'm not a I don't read. But we freely say that about math. You know, why is that? Like that, it's like inappropriate publicly to admit you're not a reader. But people, women in particular, left and right, will say, oh, I'm not a math person. I'm not good at math. So
yeah, I'm not
yeah. So I think if we want, I'll tell you what we're doing this year. We have some funding from Microsoft, and we are partnering with Bootstrap Algebra, because I love Bootstrap Algebra because it uses video game design as the hook or the context to help kids learn algebraic and pre-algebraic concepts. And so we know that this year, for example, massive amounts of learning loss or missed opportunities to learn because of COVID-19, particularly with students in Title I schools. And we need to intervene and do something to accelerate those kids. So often that type of experience is what I call, when kids don't do well on a math standardized test, we put them in another class and we do it like slower and louder in the same thing. And that's not going to work, because if they're not doing well, it probably has more to do with them like turned off than anything else. And so we are training teachers it starts next week, I think, in Bootstrap Algebra. We want them to then use Bootstrap as the context for a summer camp, which will help to improve the math performance. Kids think they're going to summer camp for video game design, because that's what they're going to do. They're going to build their own video game. But in order to build your own video game, for example, if you want your little sprite to move from here to here on the screen, that's linear functions. So now they have a reason to learn what a linear function is. And so using these kinds of computer science contexts as a way to hook kids into the learning we want them to do anyway, and to make that learning meaningful for them, not because they want to pass a test, but because they want to use it for something else that matters to them. To me, that is the way we get more kids in low resource schools exposed to computer science. Now, it takes a visionary administrator, I think, to kind of be willing to go beyond the triage approach that they often feel like they're under. And I totally understand why they feel that way. But that triage approach will never dig them out of the hole that they are going to be in if they don't really flip the paradigm of how do we get kids that have struggled already in courses like math to be successful. It's not the same thing, louder and slower. It requires a different approach to how we teach mathematics. And I think, computer science and, as I said, Bootstrap Algebra is a great tool for doing that.
Yep. That is perfect. Yes. I really hope some of the educators, leaders of the schools watch this and think about this. I had a phenomenal time talking to you and listening to you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Only thing I would say is if people want to learn more about what we do, you can just go to weteachcs.org and you'll find everything you need on there. And then you can always email us. Our contact information is on that website. And we're happy to help, whether you're in Texas or in another state. We can work with individual teachers, and then we can also work with organizations that are working with groups of teachers to, kind of help groups of teachers with customized professional development experiences that we partner with other state leaders to do. So happy to do either one of those.
Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Fletcher, and sharing your knowledge and doing We Teach CS. Definitely we can see the results, and those teachers are impacting so many kids. So thousands and thousands getting affected with good work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. I appreciate it.